you. No need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word is self-approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences, let love heal all that's broken. If you need truth, this is the place for you. No need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word is self-approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences, let love heal all that's broken.
And shalom aleichem to each and every one of you. We're so glad to be here with you today on the Bible Book Club. As you know, we are here every Thursday at this beautiful and wonderful hour. They're about 7 p.m.-ish or so. And we want to make sure you get the opportunity to enjoy and experience what we're doing today in our broadcast. We want to look today to get some things done. But before we get moving on, I want to remind you guys that you're also connected by following this broadcast. If you've not yet taken opportunity to hit on YouTube the subscribe button, please take the moment to do so now. It'll be a joy to have you do that and get that accomplished. All right. And make sure that you get notifications every time we go live on this broadcast and this programming. We want to make sure you realize there are a few announcements coming up that we are here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on the Proceeding Word, starting June 1. Presently, we're hit and miss, scatter batters out as long as travels are they are. But every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you should be here Eastern Standard Time for the Proceeding Word. And then also the same programming and broadcast for Duras Kingdom Ministries, who loves desperately all that we do here in this particular place. We are here under Duras Kingdom Ministries also every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time so that we might be able to study the Writ together. Every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Duras Kingdom Ministries under DKM Bible Study. As well as you now know, we are Sabbath Keeping Ministries, and in doing so, we are here every morrow after Sabbath, means every Sunday at about 10:15 a.m.-ish. On your dial. And those of you on YouTube, whenever we go live, you'll get notified if you make yourself noted. We keep all things in the aspect of the Torah, the Bible. That's right, the Bible. And I tell you right now, Sabbath studies, man, look, let's study together. We never debate. We're here to have Midrash studies where we learn and share. It is the place for you and for I to be. So we want to make sure you know that we welcome you here for those particular studies every Friday or Saturday from Friday at sundown till Saturday at sundown. We want you to be here, recognizing also that when we reason together in Elohim's word, we will get to know Elohim's words. All right. That's a very important thing. One more announcement before we get going on our broadcast today. Many of you have already begun to show up and be here in the programming. Don't see anybody else over on Clubhouse, so we're just going to keep moving. Don't worry about making invitations. People know what time we get started. We've been having some problems with our computers yet again. The cameras, I know some kind of update that took place with Apple, but we also want you to realize and understand that we are here for in the program that's coming up. It is a part of the Feasts of Yahweh, one of the Feasts of Yahweh. There are several Feasts of Yahweh in the year 2025. And they are here as prescribed. But the one of focus, we did Pesach already. We're now approaching one of very significant importance, and that is Shavuot, the Feast of Shavuot, 5785 Hebrew calendar, 2025 Gregorian calendar. That will be on the actual Gregorian, the Gregorian day of June 1 at sundown until June 2nd at sundown. But however, Sivan is a Hebrew month of the Torah month of Elohim's calendar that the Gregorian calendar seems to have superimposed itself upon, and we are now left dealing with that and relegating ourselves to that. So make sure you're a part of that. Now, one more thing, just one more last thing, and I'm going to move on, guys. But we have a program that many of you have been asking for. It's going to be starting on June the 17th. June the 17th. It's going to be an 8-week course. For those who are aware, there is a small and slight tuition. There is. But this is for those of you who have always been asking about the KYC programming. KYC is a significant coursing. Many of you will glean greater things than you ever knew when you've learned how to read the Bible the way that Yahweh has prescribed the Bible to be read. So starting class June 17th, you can contact us at what is known as the bottom of your screen, right-hand side. It is to request information. Go to staff.kyc@gmail.com. All right. And when you go to staff.kyc@gmail.com, you will be given information pertaining to what goes on, if there are scholarships available, the things of that like. And what days the coursing will be on. I'm pretty certain it'll be a Tuesday, sometime like 7 p.m. ish Eastern Standard Time. And if we have enough people from a different time zone, we may consider doing a different time as well. However, that's the programming. It's 1 week. It's 1 day a week, 8 weeks straight. Then we conclude, and by then you will have seen biblically what your calling is. And remember also, for those of you who are part of the alumni of those who've come through the KYC programming, you also are allowed to participate in that. There will also be a very a tuition of a moniker amount. You are allowed to also participate if you want to get a refresher, get through some redundancy, to make some things happen in reality for you, to remember what you began to learn and study back in that day. So please remember, classes begin June 17th, 2025. And of course, it will be, as we already know, the Know Your Calling, coursing for a refresher. So be a part of that. Also contact staff.kyc@gmail.com, and you will be allowed to understand how to get signed up. You'll have a greater advantage because those coming through initially will have learned something great and dynamic. You will have, in fact, learned something more than what you thought you knew. All right. So we're going to make sure you're ready and prepared for that. All right. All announcements are done and hidden away. Let's get into why we're here. We're here for what is known as the Bible Book Club. And at this time, we're going to begin to start talking and teaching about all things that we need to do and understand according to the word of Yahweh, who is, in fact, our Elohim. So let's get into Bible Book Club right now. Let's pray. Father, we thank you for your word, will, purpose, and plan. Ask you to be glorified in all things done and spoken. To you be glory, honor, dominion, might, and power, and all things we need to understand and embrace. So as we open your Torah, they are your instructions, your words. You are the author and the finisher of our faith, and we exalt your name for who you are and why you are. So we now ask you to grace us as we open your book with your word and your intentions. We are looking to hear. We repent of any and all sins, concepts, mindsets, attitudes, words, thought processes that do not comply with your instructions from Torah. And we ask you for the blood of Yeshua that was shed for our sins. And we ask you that salvation become ours as your mercy from our contrite hearts will, Father, find us and grace us with the abilities to find you in glory and be given grace in our times of need and trouble, and your salvation and its plan be available to each of us for your glory and our time and life eternally. We ask this in the precious name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Now, guys, I'm going to get right into this. Many of you know how I get. Sometimes I'm in a real studious mood right now. We're still having some problems with the Apple update on our phones and on our laptops and on our cameras. But we figured it out on two, but the main one we can't figure it out on. So we're going to leave you today for no. It keeps tuning out and toning out, so we can't keep it. So we're going to put the Bible on to make sure you and I can understand what, in fact, Yahweh is saying and doing in all time. So let's look now at the writ and what it says. We started in Exodus chapter 1. We want to do a very quick recap of Exodus, the book of Shemot, chapter 2, so we can get moving. Now, we asked many of you to read Exodus chapter 2, Shemot chapter 2. And we wanted you to look and find out what you can see, and then we talk about it today. Now, I want to start reading, and then I'm going to ask for anyone or someone to volunteer a recap of what these words mean and how they actually are to keep us caught up and persevere going forward with the new times here of being, in fact, up to speed on the storyline. We talked a lot about Moshe. We talked about a lot about a baby. We talked a lot about Ark. So let's get into chapter number 1. I'll do a recap from verses 20. All right. From verses 20. Matter of fact, I'll start from verse 18 of chapter 1. I'm going to read straight through chapter 1's part of chapter 1's ending, and then we're going to persevere right into chapter 2 so we can move on, and then we'll do a recap for who wants to get a recap and who found revelation while you read chapter 2 over this last week. Ready? Exodus chapter number 1, verse and number 18. Let's go. Here we go. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have you done this thing and have saved the men of Israel, their children, alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not like you Egyptian women, for they are lively and they are delivered before we midwives even come into them. Verse 20, therefore Elohim dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied, and they waxed very mighty. Verse 21, and it came to pass, because the midwives feared Elohim, that he made them houses. Verse 22, Pharaoh charged all of his people in Egypt about the Israelis, saying, every son that is born, you shall cast it into the river, and every daughter you shall save the daughters alive. Now let's go to verse number chapter 2. This is where we're going to pick back up. Exodus, Shemot, chapter 2. We're going to go to verse number 1. And the Bible goes on to decree and declare, and there went a man of the house of Levi and took a wife of the daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him she conceived to bear a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him for 3 months. Now, I wanted to take a moment to back up into one word here, and that word is goodly. Many people think it's godly, but we will say it's not far off. But let's get the actual definition, because too many people get confused. Is it a godly child or is it a goodly child? Well, what is a goodly child? Well, the word goodly, if you look at the Bible that I have on screen on YouTube, if you're looking up at it, you're able to see on the right-hand side the Strong's Dictionary. Strong's Dictionary always runs in correlation with the Bible that we always use. And so here is the word for goodly. It is the word tobeh. All right. Now, tobeh is the Hebrew word H2896 in the Strong's Dictionary. The Strong index number is H2896, and it is the word tobeh, and it means, or comes from, the Hebrew word 2895, right? So 2895, just to go to it, is the Hebrew word also tubeh. Its primitive root means to be, transitively, to do or to make good, or something that is well, or in the wildest sense, to be, to do, better, cheer, be, do, seem good, do good, make goodly, please, be, do, go, play well. So we know that we're talking about positive elements in even the wildest and widest of senses and uses of the Hebraic word 2895. Now, again, the word 2896, which is also tobeh, comes from 2895, and it states in the definitions on the side of your screen, it says good as an adjective in widest sense, used likewise in a noun, both in the masculine and in the feminine. The singular and the plural, good, a good or good thing, a good man or woman. All right. And then it goes on to state the good, goods or good thing, good men or women, also as an adverb. It means well, beautiful, best, better, bountiful, cheerful, at ease, fair, fair word, be in favor, fine, glad, good, deed, goodlier, goodliest, goodliness. It's graciously, joyfully, kindly, kindness. All of these things are necessary to be understood. Liketh, best, loving, merry, most, pleasant, pleaseth, pleasure, precious, prosperity, ready. See that word? Sweet, wealth, welfare, be well, and or favored. So if you take all of those and mix them into a big pot, you ain't gonna get nothing but good. So goodly, fair, easy, ready, gracious, precious, prosperous, wealthy, welfare, ready. I like the word ready. All right, but it goes on to indicate. Now let's get back to the Bible, Shemot chapter 2, Exodus chapter 2. Let's go down to verse 2 and back to where we get the word goodly from, the word tobeh. The verse says, the woman conceived, bare a son. When she saw that he was tobeh, child, she hid him 3 months. Now, verse 3, everybody's brain, for those of you who were with us on last week, should now be recapping what we talked about and get ready to make comment. If you want to make a comment, you're on YouTube, or you can make a comment in the thread. We look forward to that to keep the algorithm moving. Those of you on Clubhouse, you may come off your microphones. Everyone in Clubhouse should get a microphone. I'm sure you made an invitation. I need my reader. Somebody find me Minister Veronica if you can, please. And I also probably need Elder Rock. You know what? Make no invitations. Sorry, everybody know where we are. So if you're on Clubhouse, please make sure everybody get a microphone. If you're on Clubhouse, come off your mic, say your name, then go off mic, and our queue will put you up when the time comes. Verse number 2 again, for redundancy's sake. The woman conceived, bare a child, saw that he was a goodly tobeh child. She hid him 3 months. And when she could no longer, verse 3, hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and she daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Now, again, for those of you, just for redundancy's sake and a sense of making sure it's concretely within you, an ark, the Bible says in verse 3, when she could not longer hide him, she took for him an ark, meaning she made for him an ark. An ark is the Hebrew word 8392. It is the word tebel, meaning perhaps a foreign derivative of a box, i.e. an ark. Okay. Then she made it of bulrushes. The Hebrew word for bulrushes is the Hebrew word 1573. It is the word gomeh. It comes from the Hebrew word 1572, and that word is in fact gomal. Now, the primitive root for this word literally or figuratively means to absorb or to swallow or to drink. So now 1572 comes from the Hebrew word 1573, gomeh, or is the 72 is the predecessor for 1573, which is gomeh. It means an absorbent, i.e. bulrush, from its porosity, specifically a papyrus bulrush. All right. So these are branches of similar forms of papyrus. They absorb, they drink in water. And then verse 3 says, and when she saw that she could no longer hide the child, verse 3, when she saw she could no longer hide him, Exodus 2, verse 3, when she saw she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes, and then she daubed them with slime and with pitch, and put the child inside, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Now, we had a really interesting conversation about the flags. I'm not going to hold you guys up. I'm just trying to trigger and reignite your flame from last week with the questions you had. But flags, in the latter part of verse 3, of the river's brink, the word flags is the Hebrew word 5488. It is the word suf. All right. And so suf, probably an Egyptian origin, is a reed, especially papyrus. It's like a flag, or something that many people don't know much about, but the Red Sea was filled with, there was one place called the Sea of Reeds, right? Everybody thinks that there's a conversation about the Sea of Reeds and the Red Sea being two separate places. We can talk about that on another day, but this flag had the appearance of being red. All right. And the water could be affected to have a red hue, a red tint. So the Hebrew word for soft is an Egyptian origin, erid, especially the papyrus, which they end up taking that out. And because it would drink ink, and you could put ink on it and it would hold. And that's what they used to write on. Some of y'all didn't know that. Did y'all know that? You just learned something today. And so in this, the papyrus was especially what was used as a suf, right? So it was a flag, red seaweed in a sense, all right? So verse 3, now that you got the definitions, and when she could no longer hide him, she took him from the ark of bulrush. She took for him an ark, made it from the bulrushes, daubed it with slime and pitch, put the child in, and she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. Now that means putting it in the flags, it's in a weeded area of the water of the river where there's less current, there's less free current. This current, yes, there's always a current. It runs through seaweed, cattails that sits on beds of water bodies, but there's not a lot of movement in it. And I want to tell y'all something too that was very interesting that I paid attention to, and because I live in Florida and I see alligators, they don't often go into the flags. They don't go into the shrub unless they are already on attack of a item that they're pursuing for lunch, dinner, or breakfast. But typically they're not in there when it's thick like that, because it's not hard for them to maneuver, but it's just annoying, right? So they really just float along where the water just goes freely unless they're on pursuit of something. So if there was no identification that something was in the flags, the gators of the Nile would really have no reason to go in there. It's just not natural for them to do such unless they already have a lead on an item they're consuming. All right. So some of y'all can, get that. I hope that made sense to you. But the next piece, I'm sorry, moderators, does someone have something to say?
Santana was commenting, sir.
Santana was commenting. Oh, quickly, Santana, what was your comment?
I was appreciating the ad with the alligators because I didn't even consider that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And I get the chance to witness this because of where I live, and they are, alligators, much like crocodiles are, but different from crocodiles, are in fact of that nature. So verse 4. So verse 3 to get to verse 4. So when she could not hide the child any longer, she took him, hid him, made an ark of bulrushes, put pitch and slime on it, laid the child in it, and then laid the actual ark in the flags by the river's brink. So there will be very little momentum traveling downstream with this ark. Anybody can tell me why? Because the ark was in the flags, and the flags are sticking up and protruding through the water surface, and they are presenting anything but water flow. They are preventing anything but water flow, and then they are also substantially reducing the current's speed in that particular area. Yes, the current will go through. If a pocket of water went through the reeds, it would slow down, become almost still, but current will still carry it through. So it was a lot slower going through that area. And if the actual ark caught up on a group or a stalk of reeds poking up, then it would, of course, be hindered from going forward. So back to the story now, verse 4. And his sister stood afar off to wit what would be done to him. Now, to wit, many of you think you know what it means, so we're going to give it to you. The Hebrew word for wit is the word H3045. It is the word yadah. All right. And so yadah is a word that actually means to know. So she stood there to know what would be done with him. Got it? Verse 5. And the daughter of Pharaoh, Exodus Shemot 2:5. Exodus 2:5. And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. and her maidens walked along the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the flags, she sent her maid to fetch it. So again, just giving context, visual and pictorial for the image that you see in text, the ark is sort of kind of stalled in the flags in order for them to see it. Because by the time the daughter put it there and they're watching the ark to see what would happen to it, it would have gone down the current if there was nothing to prohibit its forward or subsequent motion. So the storyline makes sense. Verse 5 again, the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river. The maidens walked along the river's edge. They saw the ark among the flags, and she sent her maid to fetch it. Verse 6, and when she had opened it, she saw the child. And behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children. She knew it instantly. Okay. Verse 7. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, ma'am, shall I go and call to you a nurse from the Hebrew women? That the Hebrew woman may nurse the child that you just found for you. Verse 8, Pharaoh's daughter said to her, you know what? Go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. Verse 9, Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child where, y'all?
Away.
Take this child away and nurse it for me. Take this child away and nurse it for me. Take this child away and nurse it for me. I'm trying to reiterate that because I want y'all to catch it. Take the child away and nurse it for me. Right? And so that's what the text says happened. That's what the text says happened. So we can't really say a lot of the things we've seen on the movies. If the text says she took the child away and nursed it, right? Now, I want to put this into your head because, you know, we have the opportunity to really experience some things here that are significant. Now, when Pharaoh's daughter, verse 9, said to take the child and nurse it for me, I will pay you. I will give you wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. All right, verse 10 goes on and says, and the child grew, and she brought the child unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. So you have a chronological leap here, at least in this boy's life. We don't know how many years collapse and lapse, but we do know from verse 9 to verse 10 there is a chronological leap, a significant one in the boy's life, which indicates that she took the child, nursed it for some time, and then she brought the child back to him. So there's got to be, as I think Regina talked about last week, or somebody did last week, that, you know, there had to be nursing and then there had to be weaning involved. So clearly the baby that was in the basket is a walking active child by the time they bring the child, having been nursed, back to the Pharaoh's daughter. Verse 10, the child grew, she brought him back to Pharaoh's daughter, he became her son, she called his name Moshe, and she said, because I drew you out of the water. Now, we made a reference to this, I drew you out of the water, because Yahweh draws Israel out of Egypt. I like that. I like that. I wish I could get y'all to make note about that. So before I persevere onto this further, I want to sort of kind of stay in verse 10 for another few seconds here, because the child grew, came back to Pharaoh's daughter. She named the child, and it was because she drew him out of the waters. So many of the movies, and I don't want to be long on this because we talked about it at decent length last week, many of the movies you've seen has Moshe being, raised in Pharaoh's family's home, right? His daughter, and thereby subsequently interacting with Pharaoh's sons in the palace, which is very much accurate. But they made it appear that, you know, the Pharaoh's daughter had been raising him since the time she saw him 3, 4, 5 months, however long, inside the flags. But the child was taken, given life, and nursed in Goshen, in Israeli living territory. And that's significant because everybody thinks that he did not know his Hebrew people. So let's keep going down to verse number 10. We make a lot of the storylines that Moshe did not know the Hebrew people. One of the major iconic and classic movies that you've all looked at every year around Passion Week of the Christian calendar. You've been told, you see the movie, there's a certain scene where a Hebrew towel is found and the maid gets killed by Pharaoh's daughter to keep it quiet. Then Moshe is asking his adopted mother, Pharaoh's daughter, is it true I'm a Hebrew, right? Based on the text from verses 9 through 11, we cannot say that type of scene from Tinseltown, Hollywood, is not only subjective, but very inaccurate. All right. So just keep that in the forefront of your mind. So verse 10, because we're about to get deeper, verse 10 about what we were told as opposed to what we read. Somebody type into your text and say, it's better to read it than to hear it without you just type in, you know, it's better to read it. Read it for yourself. Type that in. Read it for yourself. All right. So verse 10 said, the child grew. She brought him unto Pharaoh. He became her son. She called his name Moshe. She said, because I drew him out of the water. Verse 11. And it came to pass in those days that Moshe was grown. Now, again, another chronological leap. Another chronological leap. Okay. It's another chronological leap. Listen to verse 10. The child, listen to verse 11. And it came to pass in those days that Moshe was grown. Now we're talking about above the age of accountability. Okay. So typically, though people say in Christendom modern day, people will say you don't know the age of accountability. I would grossly beg to differ. It is correlated around, though there are always mental issues, especially today with a person having this physical experience and expression. But we want to make sure that you all understand that, how do I say this without being disrespectful? That even though a child is able to have their womanly cycle, and the male child is able to produce spermatozoa, they typically correlate that with the time of accountability. Now, that's from a religious perspective. A medical perspective is and can be somewhat different, but I want y'all to know that it's a significant thing no matter what. Now, the age of accountability can be talked about, can be expressed, can be explained, but some people say it can't be. This is what I want to make sure y'all learn and really grab. So at end of day, we do know for a fact that accountability of a child's age can be narrowed down, you know, put into a tighter, parameter than many people have gone on to say. So we believe here that a child's accountability, the age of accountability is around the time that they come into the puberty stage, just a little bit beyond that, when they become what we call a young adult. Now, we've pushed that back because of our societies, but it is a very true thing. Now, again, age of accountability, I'm gonna try it again, just so you know. Age of accountability, we typically believe is around, 12-ish when they give the bar mitzvah. Okay, now the bar mitzvah is exactly at the age 13. All right, 12, 13. They give the bar mitzvah. They give the bat mitzvah. Bar mitzvah is a man's coming into his own, a young boy coming into manhood, young adulthood, and the bat mitzvah is a woman coming into the womanhood, at least with the cycle. They both have the ability, the boy now having spermatozoa, the woman now having a actual menstrual cycle. They're capable of making and bearing life and together producing life. So that's a lot where accountability comes from. Now, today, we have more issues with mental issues, so we may not be mature enough, but the reality is the body is at a condition where it can start differentiating between, watch this closely, right from wrong, not just yes and no, not yes, not just, okay, don't do this, or okay, you can do that. They actually understand what is right and what is wrong. Thus, the age of accountability. Now, because of our days today, some children can come into that mental state sooner. Some people may come in a little bit later. So that's where the disparity and the conflict, and a lot of panels are developed around that topic, and they discuss and come to their own subjective conclusions. However, this is what we believe, that approximately somewhere between 9 and 13, that child is at the state mentally and maturely of the age of accountability. Now, the reason I brought that up again is we're in Exodus chapter number 2, verse number 10. The child grew. Verse 11, it came to pass that in those days, Moshe was grown. So we know for a fact that the child, all children, are up until the age of accountability. All right, let me give you a quick reference on this for some of you who don't know. The Bible makes it a statement that says, and a child shall lead them, right? And do any of you remember the story where Yeshua was left by his parents in Jerusalem? Now, I'm not talking about Moshe. I'm not talking about the Old Testament. I'm talking about the New Testament, when Yeshua, Jesus the Christos, some of you call him Jesus the Christ, Yeshua HaMashiach, he went to the feast in Jerusalem. And as they were traveling back home, as all customary would be, as it would be customary for every family, coming to Jerusalem 3 times in a year, you come down to Jerusalem, yada, yada, come to the temple for the feast. So one feast, Yeshua is left because he was not in the caravan leaving out, because he was talking to the doctors and the rabbis and the teachers and the Pharisees and Sadducees in the temple. He was literally confounding them, answering questions and giving them questions that were actually statements, and they wondered where his wisdom came from. Okay. And so he was speaking in the temple, and his parents were just about 3 days journey gone looking, and they're like, man, where is Yeshua? So they doubled back and went back to Jerusalem, and they got Yeshua. When they asked Yeshua, where were you? Son, what are you doing? Yeshua, what are you doing? And he was like, I must be about my father's business. At that function, at that action of him speaking to the rabbis, Pharisees in the temple, at the congregation of the saints, after a Pesach Moedim, he is therefore a child leading them. They were blown away by this child. They'd not seen this child in any of their midrashes. They'd not seen this child in any of the school, Bet Safar, Bet Midrash. They had not seen him. And so when he comes back for the feasts, because he lives in Egypt, he is blowing the minds of the doctors and the teachers and the rabbinical council of that day, thus fulfilling scripture, a child will lead them. Does that make sense to anybody? Anybody to stay old?
Yeah, I'm this day old. I like how you reference that.
So when we talk about a child leading them, the reason I bring this up is because of verse number 10 and 11. And of course, I'm skimming through 10 to get to 11 because I want to show you the chronological leap that happens in the text. And the child grew. Verse 11, and And it came to pass in those days that we're talking about, Moshe was now grown. So a child is up until they have their bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, and then they become a young adult. Y'all got that? So if, let's just say, for the sake of what we're discussing right now, the shift from child to grown, right? The ability and body to bear a child, all right? They are 12. We're going to call that child. And then they're grown after they've had their bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah. Because if you know bar mitzvah, bat mitzvahs, you understand what the family has done. Now, we've minimized it and repurposed it a little bit in the times we're in today. But when they have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, they are, as a community, as family, preparing that young adult for adulthood. And all the family members come with different types of offerings and renders and gifts. Some of them are, I don't want to get into this, but some of the gifts are in the preparatory stages for your life after you've done what the community needs you to do to become a productive citizen in our community. And if you do this, if you stay in school, we need more engineers, we need more doctors, we need more nurses, we need whatever. And if you keep that path, I've got this set up for you. If you keep that path, I've got a, what's that thing called when a child goes to school, college, and then they get a job in the discipline, mentorship. No, what's it called? What? It's right tip of my tongue.
Scholarship?
No. What's it called when a student is now active and then they get a job in the discipline that they're in? Come on, college people. Internship. Thank you. An internship. They get an internship where they're saying, hey, if you go for this, I'll help you while you're getting your education. And when you're not in school, I'll help you learn what you learned by coming to my company and working for us. And then you go back to school, we'll permit that as long as you're going to stay in this discipline. Some of y'all don't know how that internship really kicked off, at least in this Commonwealth society, which is a real template for the American society. People don't know that, but those are the facts. So when I raise this, it is at that point where the child having that bar mitzvah is now being considered a young adult. So the old adults cultivate the young adult. They don't cultivate the child. They cultivate the young adult, prepare them for adulthood, yada, 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 for the community. And that's why their communities are so tight today, because once their children go to school, and once they've had their bar mitzvah, uncle, auntie, grandma, granddad, mayor, rabbi, they've already considered what they need in their community. Your family's business may be something that's already been sanctioned in their community. We need you to carry that legacy on. We need you to be locked into the family business. We need you to be an MD. We need you to be a doctor. We need you to be the electrician. We need you to be an engineer. And so their electricians aren't just, like regular electrician journeymen. They are, engineers, electrical engineers. They're mechanics, are degreed engineers. So they get their doctorates and they get their masters in those things, and then they come out, put it right into the community with those things. They can branch off and do other stuff, but that's their main focus. And the community depends on that resource, because the old guard will die, but they've already prepared through schooling, proper degrees, what they're going to need to go for in their communities. Now, for me as an African American, that's amazing. And it's also very disheartening, because we as African Americans, particularly in America, don't utilize this very simple process on how to keep our communities together, rather than, in fact, always have to rent from these people who are real estate investors by nature, bankers by nature, it's attorneys by nature, and they have their community set, and then they bless the rest of the world. So I hope you understand what we're talking about as we raise that point. But let me get back to the text, because I don't want to get off, though it's not really off, but it may be sort of kind of, unconnected at this point until we further delve into that. So bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, child, that's the crossing of the line. Do y'all understand the child and then the grown? Was that too much?
Yes, I understand. Yeah, I love the point that you added there.
So when we read in verse 10, they brought the child grew, verse 11, and later on, Moshe was grown. So we don't know years. There is no, he was 6 when he brought to Pharaoh's wife, Pharaoh's daughter. We don't know if he was 22 when we pick up now that Moshe is grown. Y'all understand what I'm saying here?
Yes, sir.
Is it going to be just me and Santana again this week?
I have a question. No, sir.
Okay. Regina, moderators, we have anybody else in queue? Just Regina?
Just Regina.
Regina, go.
Yes, I remember when we were studying doing a few Sabbaths ago, we talked about Moshe being nursed by his mother and then sent back to Pharaoh's daughter. And the fact that he didn't initially know of his Hebrew heritage, because if he had known, that he would have been killed by the Pharaoh sooner than when the Pharaoh finally realized that it was that Moshe was one of the children that he had ordered when he ordered all the boy children to be killed. So I guess my question then is, are we saying now that when he finally went to be with the Pharaoh's daughter to be raised in the Egyptian home, that he was 12 years old?
No, I don't know. We don't. That's what I'm saying is we don't know. So we don't know what time it was. We do know that Moshe was a child under 12 when he got there. And now they pick up in verse 11, years later, Moshe's grown.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay, and that's what we're saying. So we don't know at what point of his grownness he is. But one of the things we do want to kill, one of the myths we do want to kill, one of the inaccuracies we do want to diffuse is that Moshe did not know his people. How do we know that? Well, let's keep reading. Verse number 10, one more again. Moshe, the child grew, was brought to Pharaoh's daughter. He became her son. She called his name Moshe because she drew him out the waters. Verse 11, it came to pass in those days when Moshe was grown, he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens. Well, who in Egypt had a burden of a taskmaster? The Israelis or the Egyptians?
The Israelis.
So who the brethren?
The Israelis.
Does everybody get that? If you get that on Clubhouse, I need a thumb up or an exclamation mark or something to know that we're talking about the same thing, okay? So it's about making it make sense, okay? Thank you guys for your compliance. Moderators, Santana, was that?
Yes, sir.
All right, go Santana.
I just want to ask, and I know this is not really stated, but how could she get away with saying this is my child?
She's Pharaoh's daughter.
So it's likely that
This ain't a democracy. She can do whatever she wants.
So it's likely like she could have been pregnant around and he just didn't see it?
Right. She lives in her own house.
Oh, okay. I see.
He's Pharaoh. Her dad is Pharaoh. She's a grown woman. Kept on palace kept by palace, compound issues, but that interaction ain't that grand, ain't that great. Now, however, she told him this was her son. It is her son. Pharaoh believes that. That's what you have. That's the narrative. I can't get any further into that, but that's a great question. And many people like to make up fables and stories about it. So at the end of the day, Pharaoh he's all over the place. So 9 months can go by real quick if he's taking a trip to, with convoy to another area to correlate a confederacy with another nation. Journeys they can happen. Pharaoh can be about dignitary work. They can have different feasts. So there's a lot of ways that she could not have been seen by him or whatever, or she could have simply said, hey, this is my child, in the discussion. We don't know if he made a concession. This is the bloodline, but we do know by other historical points and documentation that Moshe's name was really being placed higher in Pharaoh's popularity about who would succeed him than his own blood son. And we believe that son to be Ramses. So that's another conversation for another day. But the point to the point of your question is how? We don't know. But we do know that it's quite possible for Pharaoh not to see his daughter for periods of time, and however they communicate back and forth, and whether she had a pregnancy, she can send messengers to daddy as much as she wants. She got maids. So I hope that answers that question for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking the question. So again, back to verse 11, Exodus chapter 2, verse number 11. Let's look at what happens here. And it came to pass in those days that Moshe was grown. He went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied an Egyptian.
Santana.
So it doesn't say he spied his brother. He said he spied an Egyptian, smiting in Hebrew. Oh, one of his brethren. All right, Santana, yes.
So is it possible to say here in verse 11, is this where we can pull that goodly? Because I like how you said ready, but I believe the goodly is more or less towards his character traits, or not really looks, of being a good person in that type of way as far as character. So when I studied this myself before getting to this part, I've been waiting on you.
All right. Okay.
I felt like this is the verse where it shows the beginning of that goodly coming out.
I can't speak to that. And you can in your studies. Again, each of us are different. Each of us have come through different paths before we came to this day, May the 15th at 8:07 p.m. EST. And what you saw on the same road I was on, and the way you saw what we both saw, we saw differently, though we saw the same thing. So your perspective is based on your perch and your experiences. So I say that as a very general and loose statement that what you're perceiving in the writ, though it is what we're both seeing, it will hit us different revelatorily as a revelatory issue, right? As a revelational issue. So what gets revealed to you by reading the word will be slightly different, though we know the content that we are both reading. Something based on our triggers, based on our experiences, based on our PTSDs will lead us into another way of perception or perspective. Okay. As long as it's not too far gone and too far out, we can, by his leading, tie it together for a revelation you're going to be assigned to carry out in the earth to make all things lead back to the word. Does that make sense? That makes sense? All right. Does everybody else understand what I said? Or y'all thought I was just making some gibberish up? Okay.
Yeah, I understand. No, I understand.
Good. All right. So moving forward, verse 11 again, came to pass, spied out the Egyptian, smiting in Hebrew, who was one of his brethren. All right. Again, how does Moshe know that this is one of his brethren? If he don't know, he a Hebrew. Wanda, you got to speak up.
No, I just thought that it was interesting that this isn't the first time he saw the Egyptians dealing with the Hebrews, but something triggered him this time that he didn't like what was being done to his brethren. Because I'm pretty sure that's not the first time he saw them being dealt with. But what was it about this time that made him respond?
We don't know. So there's for me, I can't even dwell on that. All I know is the record here. That's a good point. Good. I'm not shooting that down. I'm not dampening that party's question. But as Paul says, if it ain't got nothing to do with my salvation, I'm not dealing with it. Whatever it wasn't important enough to have been recorded in this oracle. So whatever it was, the point was he ended up with this result. If there was a reason for it, significant to give revelation to something about Messiah's coming sooner or later, Yahweh felt the need to tell Moshe, don't incorporate that. Write this. Does that make sense, Wanda? And that's not to shoot down your question or be like, what kind of question is that? No, because I'm the same way. I'm thinking the same kind of way. Okay, so what was it? And that's when Paul reminds us later, don't get caught up in all the questions. Focus on the things that are pertinent to the salvation. Moshe had children. Well, why wasn't Moshe's children given the throne when he went on up to glory? And why did it? Don't matter. When Moshe had children, you got a mention of them. That's all Yahweh needs you to know. Moshe had a wife. He got divorced. That's all you needed to know. Well, why did he divorce Sapphira and marry the other woman? I don't know. You know what I mean? So that type of thing. Is that what condescending, Wanda, or shooting down of your?
No, sir. It wasn't really a question. I'm sorry I made it sound like that. I just thought it was very significant, interesting, that there was something about this one that triggered him.
Right.
And because he sees it all the time.
We don't know that. We can't say that. We can't say that, Wanda. We cannot really say that. Because and the reason I say that to all of us, we can't say that. Yes, he's a part of the ship. So we would literally begin to think in our minds, he's got to have seen this before. I'm with you. But as ministers of the gospel, we can't say that because someone will make a new religion behind that.
I see your point there, yeah.
I understand.
So verse 13 goes on to say, great question, great conversation. As long as we're all getting clarity, there's no dumb question, no wrong question. We just need questions and we need appropriate answers as to how we remain unified about the writ of Elohim. So verse number 12, the Bible goes on to say, and he looked this way and he looked that way. And when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian. And hid that Egyptian he slew in the sand. Verse 13. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Hebrews strove together. They were fighting. And he said to them that did the wrong, why are you smiting your brother? Why are you smiting your fellow? And he said, man, who made you prince and judge over us? Do you intend to kill me like you killed that Egyptian? And Moshe feared and said, oops, surely this thing is known. Right? And now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he actually sought to slay Moshe. But Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. Now, verse 15 has another very significant movie portrayal with a lot of influence from Hollywood and Tinseltown, where there's the whole thing I talked about earlier. Moshe is like, okay, am I a Hebrew? They found a Hebrew slave in my crib when I was on the river Nile, and now you hid this from me, and is it true? Pharaoh's daughter goes and kills the woman who could tell him that he was, and all this, and then he finds his mom, hugs his mom, embraces his brothers, Aaron and Miriam, all there. I know this thing about heart, and when I read this, I'm like, that ain't what the writ say.
You do know the movie by heart.
Yeah, I know the movie by heart. We had listened on my age, the era I came up when, every week of Passion Week, multiple times by y'all got too many channels now. Y'all got apps and other channels, but back in my day, there was only CBS, ABC, and NBC and PBS. Okay, NBC, CBS, ABC, and PBS, and all of them would play it during, the Passion Week. And so it was a iconic thing. We'd all sit down with popcorn. We didn't have all the apps. You couldn't watch TV on your phone, couldn't watch TV on your watch, couldn't watch TV on projector. You had a box that was 1326. And if you had a 28-inch screen TV in your home, you was the bomb the diggity. And if it had color, you didn't have to worry about rabbit's ears and black and white UHF and VHF. Y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Tuning, you had it, and everybody would come by your house and sit down, and hey, we're gonna go over and watch the Ten Commandments. So it was a rallying thing for us, But let me move on for that because I don't want to get caught up in y'all reminiscing back into those days. But at end of day, understanding what verse 15 represents, people made the image that he found out after he killed the guy, or women was a scene that he found out he killed the guy after he found out he was Hebrew. Yeah. Sorry, the scene was he went through the whole grown folk keep secrets in the house thing, and then was angry and was out, and his people who he rules over, Egyptians, he found one. Now with his newfound epiphany of who he is, he sees one mistreating a Hebrew, and then he kills the Egyptian in his fit of anger and rage and confused mind. Now all of that becomes gospel to most of the people as a Christian. So all we want to do is make sure you understand that what you're seeing by others telling you the story is different than what you're reading. Now, again, subjectiveness and the abilities to stretch the content into a context of their storyline will always happen with anything you do because of entertainment. We got people right now making books that are not quite the truth, but we're just going to stretch it and make it mean. Y'all be careful with that stuff. For real. If what's in that content or context they're trying to draw for you, I don't care if it's a book, if it's a movie, if it's a YouTube tutorial or whatever, you better be able to line the writ up before you take anything out of that item of entertainment, because that's all I can call it at this point, biblically favored entertainment, to become a reality. You're looking at Chosen on TV. You're looking at all these things. You're looking at the Nile. You're looking at the Prince of Egypt. You're looking at the Ten Commandments. You're getting other books for children just so they can have entertaining content. Be careful of taking the entertainment as gospel.
Thanks for saying that and keep saying that to us. Thank you.
I'm glad you appreciate it. So verse 15 again is left to this narrative you and I have seen in Tinseltown. Verse 15 again, Exodus chapter 2:15. Now when Pharaoh heard this, he sought to slay Moshe. Moshe fled the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat down by a well. Now, if I really want to open this up and talk about this sort of kind of offline, as it were, from the writ, pushing the narrative that I was just telling Wanda, we can't say certain things, even though we may have an ideal of how it's got to be improbable that he didn't see abuse to one of his brethren in the past. Again, what was significant about this one that made him snap, right? Here we could also say, well, how, if he knew he was a Hebrew, did Pharaoh actually know he was a Hebrew? Or when did Pharaoh find out he was a Hebrew? Because if Moshe is also Prince of Egypt, it would indict that Pharaoh never going to put a Hebrew over his empire. And if he's going to do that, he must deem this particular man, Moshe, a son. So much so that it wouldn't lead as to a question about his birth and how did he know he was Hebrew or whatever. It would lead him to think this is possibly his blood, because a Pharaoh is not going to turn the kingdom over to anything but his bloodline. You guys see that, or did I just conflict things for y'all?
I don't see it, Apostle. Thank you.
All right. So that. Okay, Wanda, what you got?
because we were discussing this in one Sabbath, and I just knew that man knew that he was Hebrew.
Okay.
But the way you just explained that makes so much more sense. That he couldn't have wanted if he was a Hebrew. He couldn't have known. So
yeah,
it was hard for me to accept that. But the way you just explained that, I don't know, something clicked, and it's like, you know what, that's true. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Right, or that sounds likely. Right, exactly. It may quite well be true, but the writ doesn't give us that insight, but it does leave us with verse 15, and our imaginations run. So let's move on from 15 now. So verse 15 again. Now Pharaoh heard this thing. Now how he heard it, whether somebody came, run tell that, like, hey, did you know Moshe was a Hebrew? You know what I mean? Pharaoh, what? Yeah, Joker just killed an Egyptian over there anyway. Well, he's Moshe. Yeah, but he's a Hebrew. You mean to tell me the people we actually imprisoned or we actually made subservient is in my hierarchy and rank, and I've been raising them in my house? There are so many narratives we can run with that. Be careful. If it ain't in the writ, stay away from it. All right. So verse 15. Now, when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moshe, but Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian, and he sat by a wall. Verse 16. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came and drew water and filled their troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, right? But Moshe stood up and helped them and then watered their flock. Now, so you all have a real good idea of Moshe leaving Pharaoh's house, and you got this long part of the story where he goes all the way to this, foreign land, which is really, across the desert, to a land called Midian. Now, for a very interesting point of reference, I want you all to remember, does anybody know the significance of Midian? Okay, Wanda, go.
Midian is one of the children that Abraham had with Keturah.
Okay. So, great point. Did everybody hear what she said? Give me a thumbs up if you heard her. Okay, so let me help y'all. Look at verse 16 on the screen. I thank you for the 2 thumbs up, 3 now. Look at verse 16. Now, the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. Now, I want y'all to make sure you get this. Go to Genesis chapter 25. Everybody go to Genesis chapter 25. Genesis chapter 25. Y'all let me know when y'all get there. Come on, hurry up. I got it on the screen. Genesis chapter 25.
We're there.
All right.
I'm there.
Okay. Genesis chapter 25. Okay. Now, in Genesis chapter 25, Sarai, Abraham's wife, is dead. He buries her. Then, verse 1, it's on the screen. Look at the screen. Then again, Abraham took a wife. Her name was Keturah. She bare him a son named Zimran, a son named Jokshan, a son named Medan, and Midian, and a son named Ishbak, a son named Shua. And then it gets into who begat who, right? And this is a significant thing. So let me read down a little bit so y'all can get the context. So y'all know there's Midian, M-I-D-I-A-N, and then there's one called Midan, M-E-D-A-N, right? There's Midan, and then there's Midian, right? Now, look at verse 3. Jokshan begat Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan are Ashurim and Lasuim and Lamum, right? Lumim, right? And the sons of Midian are Ephah, Epher, Hanak, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah, and Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac, his son of Sariah. But the sons of the concubines, Ishmael, and these 6 here in verse number 2, Zimran, Jokshan, Midan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua, verse 6. But the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, Abraham gave them gifts and sent them away from Isaac his son, while he yet lived eastward unto the east country. All right. So we see that Moshe, back to the story we're in, Exodus chapter number 2, verse number 18. I think that's where we are, right? 16. Okay, it's verse number 16. Now the priest of Midian had 7 sons. So Moshe is running from Egypt, and Yahweh is so unique in the way he's done this to preserve his chosen. He actually has Moshe run to a foreigner he doesn't know, who happens to be his own family. Nobody finds that deep?
Yeah, I didn't see it. I do. That's good.
And this is why Moshe could hear from Yahweh in the land of Midian, because Midian was raised by Abraham.
That's good.
Amen. Amen.
Okay.
Yeah, I totally missed that one. Good.
So now, verse 16, now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came and drew water, filled the troughs, watered the father's flock, and the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moshe stood up and helped them and watered their flocks. And when they came to Reuel, who is their father, he said, "How is it that you are come so soon today?" And they said, "An Egyptian delivered us out of the hands of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us and watered our flocks." And he said unto him, his daughters, "Where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him, that we may eat bread." Moshe was content to dwell in the land with the man, and gave Moshe Zipporah his daughter, and she bare him a son, called his name Gershom, and he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." But y'all, the part that blows me away is it's his family. He didn't even know it. Yahweh got him set up. So some of y'all need to know this today as we encourage you. I'm going to stop here, and we've been an hour and some change. I want you to understand that just because you go to a strange land don't mean that Yahweh ain't got them as your brethren.
Yes, that was good.
We need to make that a quote. And some of y'all are so afraid of moving from what you have familiar that you don't realize that the brethren may be strangers to you. Because if it was not, and I'm gonna jump the storyline, then I'm gonna cut it off right here. Some of them don't realize how Moshe got to know Yahweh, and why did Yahweh meet Moshe in the land of Midian.
Nice.
Next week, let's talk about it. We're gonna get into it. Well, I'm always glad and honored to have the opportunity to share with you guys, and I hope that this reading has done some significance for you. We'll come back to Exodus chapter 2, and we'll start at verse number 21 and work from that point, okay? So, wanted to make sure, Minister Wanda, would you help me, Leslie, Yolanda, one of y'all help me pin and earmark that and pass it on to Minister Wanda so she can get it to me in the text that we have designed for this stuff, and we'll make sure we're back here next week, same time, same chasing, same channel, barring any, emergencies. And Yahweh, if the Lord will, Yahweh say so, we'll be back at that hour, at that time. Please contemplate what's been read. Go back over and read it all again. And don't not reiterate it for your own self, not just when we read it on this program. Read it for yourself before you come, and read ahead so that when we read it again, Yahweh can open some things up for you. Father, we thank you for your word, will, purpose, and plan. Ask you to be glorified and magnified in all things that we've done and spoken. To you be glory, honor, dominion, might, and power, both now and forever. Now, may Yahweh bless you all and keep you. May Yahweh make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift his countenance upon you and grant you all 13 attributes of his shalom. This we pray and ask in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. We all say, Amen. Again, welcome to the Bible Book Club. See you soon. Shalom.
Truth, this is the place for you. Don't need to complicate it. It's best to keep it basic. Open the book, the word is self-approved. He's Alpha and Omega, the answer since the early ages. What you should do is learn about the greatest. Just so you know, our door is always open. Let's study together instead of debating. Share our differences. Let love heal all that's broken.